So just like change this video to.
My favorite, everything that they.
Oh, that was is the one. Meeting on me.
Oh, I know,
Yeah, because it's looking at us over here because we're talking. All right, and it's working. So let's stop recording for now.
Oh, it's like.
It's good. This is good. So as long as you see that thing.
I'm trying to get up to the.
You're good to go, George. Yeah. See the red light is on?
Sure.
Oh, it's going. Yeah, it's going.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It is 11:06. This is a special meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. We're continuing our budget work sessions. What we're gonna do is as we've started every one of these with a big picture summary from our finance director. And then we will hear from the clerk and recorder, the housing authority, and the emergency services GID. I think those latter two will be handled by the finance director. Then we can talk about the results of our homework last week and what we're gonna put into the next round of the budget. Rachel, I think we're starting with you for a big picture summary.
Well, the first one. Should we let it? Yes. We're around sharing this. And. Over. One more step. Is that sharing? No. I don't know. I got it. No. Okay. Big picture summary. The request, just to know. We've been working through. We started off with a fairly significant request. Then the proposed budget was prepared. I've significantly cut down those requests, and then we came back to where we are at the proposed budget. Just to give you some of that high level summary in detail. The proposed budget was at 45.5 million in expenses and 42.1 in revenue. And the working session, these workshops were at 43.9 in revenue and 50.4 50.5 in expenses, so we're still quite a bit off. If we were to accept all of the requests during these working sessions, would be 3.5, 3.6 million over and into fund balance just within the general fund. So what has happened since the conversations that we've had in these working sessions, I've had time to sit down with the human services team and flesh out some of the administrative charges, making things more transparent in their budget. And they're in a much better place. The same with the ambulance fund. We've had a significant change with the ballot initiative, so those were built in as well. And we'll go over that during the the Emergency Services General Improvement District conversation as well. So the last part is today, getting that bigger picture view of what you all want to see within the final adopted budget. And also, Brenda Corbett is here, our clerk and recorder. Since she was not able, there was an election going on, she wasn't able to attend the other working sessions, so we have her in today. But I did want you to know, we did include into the working session summary total here, the request she has, which is a mid-year improvement for her staffing. So I'll stop there and ask you to ask me any questions if you have them on that big picture view. Otherwise, we can move on to the working session and into Congress conversation if you like.
I missed that last part.
Do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
I'm gonna ask at the end of the day for just a little bit more detail on what changes to expect in human services.
Great.
But I think not right now. So, okay, well, then next up, we have the clerk and recorder. We have clerk and recorder Corbett here, everything's in titles.
And I apologize that I haven't even been able to listen in on the other sessions, had time to, so I don't know if you want, if we go through this, kind of remind us. Questions?
Thank you for reminding me. So what we've done, each of the directors have really just zoned in on the changes between proposed and working sessions. So the things that were submitted but were not part of the proposed budget. So in this scenario, on the screen, I have got your budget up there as your submission, and then highlighted in blue the request that you have, which is an improvement for your mid-year staffing request, which is right here.
What does that say?
And it's short.
Receive.
Yeah,
Remove.
yeah, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit too.
I don't have any issues with any of that, except to say that a couple of things need to be moved around. In my clerk's revenue, the state ERTV grant, that should be that, the 350,000, the additional amount is 341, 284, 34, we got that down in the elections, that's not an elections grant. And my question also is, all of that, 100% of that funding is gonna go to IT, so should that, because my grant, should it be in my information here? It's my grant, but it's all going to IT.
But it's
Security
also
things.
for your audit, your office, right?
In the roundabout way, security stuff. I won't be receiving anything physical, it's the, like, internet, Fortinet. There are Sophos, software, some, potentially some computers.
And it's grants just for clerks.
Just for, it can go towards the whole county as long as it touches my office in some way.
Let's just leave this here, I think,
Okay.
and we'll just know it's there.
But it should go to the, clerk's part of the fund, not elections.
And then I have it down here in elections at 350, 684. Is that's incorrect? It's zero that out?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then that actual amount that would be coming to us is 341, 284. So that's a nice chunk of change to help us out with some IT things and that. The other point of good news that I have is in that county clerk fees. The reporting fee has gone to a flat $45 as of July of this year, and that's bringing a substantial amount of revenue. We're already currently at the year, that's without October, we were at 247.31. I expect us to be around 300,000 again. With those reporting fees being included in that. So that 200,000 is quite low.
Will you repeat what you anticipated again?
Right around 300,000.
All right.
Um, You know, the other things are postage, I feel is very low. Unfortunately, it's gone up again to 70 cents. And my invoicing from DOR is 1,000 to 1,200 a month right now. And that is not including anything going out of my office. So, but there's a surplus in elections, so I was thinking if we just kind of move some of that around, I don't spend that much time in elections, maybe take 2,000 out of elections and put that to police to their first line, that's just kind of a thing that we can do at any point, is that correct? We need to nab some funding from one and move it to another, is that okay
Sure.
to do, or?
So you want to move it from the 103 section in elections to the postage here, move it up there.
Right.
Okay.
When you mail ballots, where does that expense come from? Does that come from a line postage? A line is not postage, sorry.
It is in the postage, the 103 postage section there. So down the elections, 10310 73 110. And I just funded the account before an election for the check from here to the post office. Most of our expense comes from mandatory mailings from the state that we have to do for elections, just constantly throughout the year. When somebody registers to vote or changes their address or gets a new driver's license, and it's just mailing after mailing, it's a huge expense. It's comfortable with everything else, other than I would like to bring to your attention that chief deputy clerk position with, it wasn't an issue for me last year, and I had stated that I can handle it as long as I'm here. But as you all know, I'm not going to be staying in the county. This will be the end of my third year, end of 26. And I'm extremely concerned that nobody knows what I do. I mean, the ladies in the office, as senior deputy clerks, can carry on the day-to-day stuff, but they don't know what it takes to put together an election and do all that programming and stuff in the background and dealing with vendors and stuff. So that worries me a lot. I'm wondering if we could even get someone maybe halfway through the year where I could train them on the things that I do as chief deputy, that they could step in at the end of the year, not necessarily to be the clerk, but to know what I do. I don't feel it's my staff's position to know everything I do. That's not in their job description.
And this would, sounds like it would make sense to have this person come in before the election so they can work.
Right, as a chief deputy clerk. And whether or not they are service for chief deputy or they want to run, that's their business, that's their prerogative.
And I don't know if this is an appropriate question or not, Peter can give me this, it's not, is there someone in your office that can step into your shoes right now?
They don't want to. Like
Um,
I said, they could carry on those day to day, so our office stays open, so we have to meet. But they wouldn't want to do it,
And sounds like they also don't know everything.
correct?
so can I ask whether? What I hear, I think you're saying is you'd like to promote internally from one of your deputies to a chief deputy.
No, they don't want that either. No, I would have to search. Open it up as a new position.
So I think this is very similar to the succession planning and that's going on in Carolee's office too, where we need someone to learn the job to potentially run. Then we can talk about staffing after that position, that person is elected.
The challenge that I have in this context is, in the treasurer's office, we have a person who is on staff who, you know, it is part of a succession plan. The idea that we would create a position to hire an external candidate with the anticipation that they would be running mid-year I think in my mind, it creates some scenarios that we may not want, right? Like say that person gets hired, we create an FTE costing, I don't know, what's the cost of that FTE, $110,000. Say that person doesn't get elected. Are we just owning an FTE in that office permanently moving forward?
So I have two different scenarios I'm thinking about. So if that deputy was still there, it would help the person that was elected. You're saying that, or the other thing is, if we were to not do that and anybody that steps it up and wins that election, what do they go through to, you know, be trained and be in your position? Cause
And that's true, because a lot of people that are elected don't have any background in what I do, so there is training. It's 3 days.
Oh, dear.
For the state. Our county clerks association is very strong, so they have mentors and stuff that can help them through those things. So maybe it would be okay, I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
And this is also a position where they have to live in the county for a year before they run.
What I mean, what I worry about is like this position was, I asked some questions about it this morning. This chief deputy position was vacant for half of 2023 and all of 2024. And so when we eliminated this position at the end of 2024, it was because we didn't think we needed that extra FTE in the clerk's office. And I just worry about creating it and having it turn into something that's permanent, or having to lay somebody off because we don't actually need it in the long run. And so I'm a little hesitant about that one, colleagues.
It's a huge part of why I'm leaving, though. It's a massive workload. I think it's too much maybe for a lot of people. It's become a lot for me to handle too, so.
Well, and I'm concerned that, with all the attention on elections, we need somebody very professional, very well versed, and has backbone.
That's right. I didn't intend for the chief deputy to run, as you stated, after 6 months. That wasn't my intent, but you are correct, we would be adding another position, an FTE, which we're not doing right, so.
Whereas, I mean, in an ideal world where you had someone in-house, you could of course
Yeah,
change the title with like a marginal increase and not an entire new FTE.
right.
So
Is there, like there's another Peter. You can give me you don't have to say names, but are there people in the county who could do a good job at this that you would be actively recruiting?
I've only had one person speak to me, and I think she would do a phenomenal job. I haven't been recruiting or thinking about that to anyone else.
Okay, that's all right,
So,
that's all right. Okay, that's encouraging, because we're such a small county, and
Yes.
law, if they have to live here for a year, makes things hard.
Okay.
it's occurring to me from a process perspective because of. We asked at the end of our last budget work session it looks like it was November 5th. For like, basically a survey to go out to the three of us about, here are all the different things that you could choose to fund and how are you gonna rank them? And your request was in there because we haven't heard from you yet, so we didn't wanna just like, without board direction, not include it. So I think like this is a conversation that will come up again this afternoon. But it's good to have you here to be able to just ask, to describe the meeting and all that stuff.
Right.
Um,
Well, I'm fine just leaving it as is. I mean, I'm not fine, but it's okay. I think it'll be okay. And I have to remember that, like I said, a lot of people that are elected are just thrown in and say, here you go, have fun. And we do what we can to, somebody that is going to run is going to want to do the best job they possibly can anyway, so. We'll just leave it at that for now.
one of the things that we're considering is, I mean, effectively right now. What has happened is that the board has moved it on to consideration, and so we will be talking about whether to fund it and whether to. The other thing that we have going on is we're planning a 6-month check-in, to see how revenues are doing. Our revenue projections are not optimistic. They're also not pessimistic, and so we could either be in 6 months trying to figure out where to make mid-year cuts or what else we can fund, just so that you know from a process perspective what to expect at mid-year. Am I misspeaking?
No, our goal with revenue is to hit the number, but this year we have so much unpredictability that we need to check in on it.
And should this person be interested, would they be able to jump in and learn everything they possibly can from you, for, you know, that mid-year through the election?
Not as an employee, you mean?
No, as an employee.
If they were going to run, are you asking me? If they're,
Um,
or as the chief deputy clerk?
Both. I mean, whoever. You know, I like relying on staff, they know their colleagues and they know, you know, the business. And, if this is someone that you would like to encourage to consider running, I just wanna make sure that that gives them enough time to get up to speed, or if we need to. Get them in there earlier. I mean, elections are so important to me, and they're so important to this country that I don't wanna do this, half-cocked. So,
Well, and even in a motor vehicle, the DOR training is anywhere from 3 to 6 months to even be able to give them access to their software, so. Doing the daily financial stuff that I need for DOR takes that amount of time. The staff could pull those reports for them. Virginia's my senior deputy clerk of motor vehicle, so she could potentially pull those, but this person. For at least 3 months. To learn it. The elections part of it, boy, it sure would be good to sit through one. I know it's probably a big one. you know.
I know, I mean, I'm really concerned. Thank you for staying through the election.
I'm staying for everyone that voted me in. For sure, and everyone else. I take it seriously, for sure.
Just something that is popping in my head right now for us to consider. I wonder what it would look like to create a temporary position. I think that's something that the governments do sometimes. So it's a 6-month position. I don't know, I'm not suggesting we would make a decision like that today, but it's just popping in my head, so I would say it.
Do you think those are hard to hire? It's hard to find good staff up here anyway, so to tell them it's only for 6 months, do you think that would work here? I don't know.
I think it would, I mean, if we felt like there was a permanent need, then I could see creating a permanent position. But you are correct. I mean, there's a scenario where that works and there are several where it doesn't, right? But I'm just kind of like throwing out. I think
I mean, I have some experience with term limited positions, and generally speaking, if it's for less than 2 years, they really, you know, get a lot of interest.
Okay, well, to summarize, I think you brought up some things that I didn't hear, like board interest in offering direction on, meaning that, you know, we can work it out between you and staff around the right postage amount, what to do with that grant, where it lives, whether it lives in somewhere else in the general fund or somewhere else outside of year 2 lines. Colleagues, am I reporting correctly? Do you have?
Oh, yeah, no, I'm absolutely good with that.
No, the only question that I did have is it says you don't see any federal grants coming your way. I don't know typical years. Is it usually state granted or?
It's Secretary of State's office, but they are federal grants. That offer them return matching, some of them do not. But there's a target on Colorado, as we all know from this administration, so I don't think we're going to be receiving any federal grants in 2026. Every way, yeah. I've gotten this over 6 or, I don't know, total was now $600,000 or $700,000 in grants for this money. So, yeah, I'll keep looking.
It's, the way this is baked into the budget, from what I can tell, is that we're keeping the expense but not counting on the revenue, because of course, conducting an election, like, we just have to spend the money, right?
Yes.
Am I
think
misunderstanding those?
Maria always put a placeholder under revenue and expenses just in case something comes through, so that it's tracked properly.
Okay. Well, I mean, if we get something on always make under operation.
I know, right? It's pretty good. So that.
Okay. Anything else from you?
No, just have any questions about any of the lines and what we do and. But it's expensive. Thank you for hearing me.
You are welcome, and thank you for coming and presenting.
And I would be one of those that would love to see what you do, but when we're not so busy and I don't know when that's gonna happen.
I know. Yeah, anytime.
Yeah, yours on the treasurer's office.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, thank you. Next up, we have the housing authority budget, which I see has gotten some revisions. I guess in the packet next is emergency services. Doesn't matter to me which one we get first.
I'm the person for both.
Let's do emergency services. I'm seeing that on two screens. Okay.
Okay. So the proposed budget did not include the ballot initiative, so the first and at the beginning of the emergency services general improvement district is the assessment of, based on the current assessed value and applying the cap, the amount of funding that we will receive into the emergency services general improvement district. It's also understood that of those, 9 mills will be shared to the fire authority through contract, which is now reflected in the fire authority contract line here. And then the balance of those dollars minus treasurer fees, actually how it works is I take the IGA less other expenses and then apply the distribution of the dollars. That's why the number is at 1.580 million as opposed to the full 2 million. And then the ambulance fund receives the balance, which is 439,171. So those are now built in. That will be a transfer from this local government fund to the county into the ambulance fund. So that improves the ambulance fund. And we actually end up with a fund balance as opposed to a negative balance within the ambulance fund, which was great news because we would have had to cost share revenue over to the ambulance fund. And now we do not need to do that. We also improved the amount going to the fire authority. So those 3 big revisions are shown here. What you'll notice also is the treasurer fees do go up and those align with the amount of collections, but she cannot accept them onto taxes. So I'm going to back that down as well because she can only accept and only charge onto taxes the amount. So I just.
Oh, not mills.
No, it's interesting. I went back and read the statute and she and I talked last week and there's a nuance. She shall apply all her fees, the treasurer, onto collections of revenue, except taxes. As well, except federal dollars. So those 2, and then the last is except transfers. So between those 3, she cannot assign an additional 1% fee, so this fee actually does go down. And will be more in line with the 26, actually even less.
So when the treasurer fee goes down,
The amount that we can cost share goes up to the authority and then to ultimately our ambulance fund as well.
So that would be split proportionally, that
Yeah.
like. For purposes of today,
Yeah.
around $1,000 would be split proportionally.
Yeah, you can see in the past, she's only charged 25,000, roughly 22,000 in fees annually, but. I'm gonna push back on how much she's able to charge on that 1%. Just because I don't think she can charge on the SO tax or the delinquent, she may be able to charge on the delinquent tax, but not on property tax either. So I'm gonna leave this at the 63 right now, I'm not gonna change anything, but I want you to know that I need to go back to her, just because this morning she and I were. Going back over her ability to charge those fees on taxes.
And so you mean you're not gonna change anything today, but by the
No.
time we get our budget.
Yes,
for
right,
approval.
Right, because this kind of is a red flag,
it is.
we went up almost 40,000. 37,000.
Yep.
Did I hear you say that? The E ESGID hit the 5.25% cap?
Right. It did.
Um. Can you,
Not very much. Because we, originally, when we thought it wasn't, we weren't using qualified property tax. We weren't backing the mine revenue out and applying the tax and then adding it back in. So it was a percentage of a bigger number. So I think without it, it's, the assessed value is about 180 million. With it, it's about 178. So it's not a lot of money.
No, it's about 5,000 short
Yeah,
of ambulance.
We've got fire chief in the room, Kelly.
Question on that 5.25%. Is that on the assessed valuation or the revenue?
It's on the assessed valuation, so we take the assessed valuation and back out. The qualifying taxes, and then we apply the assess.
So. The qualifying taxes would be the ESD at 4.5 mils or at 9 or at the 11.5.
The cap applies to the assessed value, and then we pull the mills out after that. So we don't,
For the assessed value.
yeah,
So do you have a final number on that, or is that gonna change next month?
it could, we do not have the final assessed value, Donna G has committed our assessor to completing those by the 26th.
Thank you. So we'll see that go up by. A very small amount.
Very small.
Once treasurer fees are backed out,
Correct.
$20,000-$30,000 range. Okay.
Would you say the ambulance fund won't be asking a general fund transfer? Is that because there's enough funds, or is it going to be running a proposed deficit still, or?
Sure. So, what I went back over was, part of the conversation we had last week was related to the E911 and pulling out however much we could from the JetCom contract and the general fund and putting it back to the E911 fund so that we use as much of that fund balance as possible again this year, which I did apply. So there's 64,000 there. And then additionally, inclusion of these dollars and then revising the end of year estimated. The change in end of year estimated fund balance was related to projections on sales tax, and that number is revised. And that went up to 1.7 million as opposed to 1.2, which is what I had it at before.
Other questions about this one?
The only question that I had is, why is there such a difference in the interest earned? 24.
And
25 and then to 26,
In the Emergency Services General Improvement District.
yes.
That's a good question. I will ask our treasurer. She reports those out to us and set those interests.
Okay.
And it has a lot to do with just overall CPI and the consumer pricing index and what the Fed sets for interest rates as well. So there is a lot of fluctuation that does happen based on the economics of the time. That I can ask treasurer to provide more detail around that projected number.
What else?
So for the 2025 estimated interest of over 10,000. We only got 5,000 of that, or I don't understand that.
So what we budget is, so our estimated is 10,024. What we received last year was 10,830. These were the budget figures that we placed last year.
We're being very conservative with any kind of interest earns going into next year because ultimately they're investment vehicles. The economy falls apart,
Okay.
you might see zero. So Carolee's the one who sets those, but they're very conservative. And a lot of them are in money markets and things that are actually pretty sensitive to de-dollarization. So you have to be careful with the investment stuff this year.
That just, I mean, good catch, Judy, I mean, that's just such a huge job. Sorry to.
Yeah, we can revise the number up, I think,
I just was curious why.
I think it's more of a check-in thing, honestly, because it's gonna be hard to know.
Yeah.
Not across all funds, really.
Yeah.
It seems to me like in either scenario, we will see interest rates go down at the Fed in either economic scenario.
Well, unless corporate paper, the bond prices go down because nobody believes that that's gonna get paid back. So it depends on what she's invested in. So we can just follow up with her.
And then functionally, if we earn more interest in this fund than we budget, what happens is that $9,000 difference, say we get 10,000, would just be distributed 1 year later into the ESGID, or into the fire authority and the ambulance fund, right?
It still has a fund balance.
You can go into fund balance and we can start moving more out of fund balance. There is a fund balance within the ESGID currently. Our fund balance is around 137 right now. That's what I'm anticipating at the beginning of 26. So we can begin to start spending that down next year as well and sharing that back out to the fire authority and the ambulance fund.
Other questions on this? Kelly? You good?
Is it, Carla used to put the Tabor Reserve on there, is that still subject to a Tabor Reserve?
The funds that we've been identifying, we haven't assigned the Tabor Reserve to the ESGID. Haven't done that, no.
Some of the finance side, ESGID.
So maybe we should look into whether or not it applies. I'm sure it does. If it did, it would also apply to the housing authority. We've not budgeted that in the past either. So that includes any component unit that we have. The housing authority and the ESGID and separate funds. There are 3 separate funds on top of that.
Your fund balance currently meets the Tabor Reserve ability, so. Largely is active.
There's, the Tabor Reserve wouldn't apply because it's not a. You don't have expenditures out of there other than assigned stuff. Like you don't have staff and expenses above and beyond that.
I don't know that it, I don't know that the amendment, it speaks to the type of expense, just that the actual assignment of the reserve applies.
Essentially, in a district like this, that's just a money fund. It'll never be overspent due to an emergency. It would require a reserve fund, yeah.
You think so? Yeah, that's logical.
Yeah.
I'm satisfied knowing that we're gonna meet that reserve requirement if it exists, based on how you budgeted.
Fund balance.
And maybe, I mean, that gives us a year, if everybody's satisfied, to figure out whether we actually need to account for a table reserve or not, as we're meeting the requirement anyway. That,
They do apply. Paper requirements do apply.
yeah, and it's all.
Special districts are just subscribed under the intergovernmental statute.
Anything else? I'll just, some editorial, it was really, really nice, and I was really grateful to voters when I saw that revenue go from 800,000 to 2 million. Okay, let's talk about housing authority.
In the same conversation in that vein, thank you, Kelly. In that vein around the housing authority. I'll defer to Peter on his assessment as to whether or not Tabor applies here as well. To this one, but the largest difference between the proposed and the workshop number here is movement of the local planning grant that was received by the county, not the housing authority, and placed into the planning piece of housing in the general fund within. So that's the reduction in expense and the reduction in revenue that's reflected, and it just goes back to just the housing authority contract and then any treasurer fees assigned from money coming in.
So this budget is just what the county owes the housing authority, but they have their own budget to pay for the executive director. What's?
So this is a completely separate section, because I know you understand that it actually doesn't have any influence on the regional housing authority. Our contribution to the regional housing authority comes out differently. And is part of our general fund, not the separate housing authority component unit that this is. This is in relationship to the county's current operations of its housing authority and its contract for that. So there's three parts really to housing in the county. It's this authority. It's the establishment of the position, which is the second part. That's also the regional authority director. That's the second part of it. And then the third is this regional health, that is our local authority that we have. This local authority is intended to dissolve after and be joined with the regional housing authority work.
Okay, so I wrote this down one time. You said the first one was the housing, you meant the Clear Creek Regional Housing.
The Clear Creek Regional Housing Authority is a completely separate entity from the county. This one is a component unit of the county.
It might be helpful, the Clear Creek Housing Authority was created in 2013 or so, when Riverbend was built. And what it does is it participates in what happens at Riverbend, the affordable housing unit. Or
Okay.
development in Idaho Springs. The plan, when we created the multi-jurisdictional housing authority, was to ultimately transfer all the obligations. I think it owns 1% of Riverbend. And the intent is to transfer that obligation to the regional housing authority and just close the Clear Creek Housing.
Okay, and when you say establishment of position, what position is that? Is that
The executive director.
of the Clear Creek Regional Housing Authority?
Correct.
Okay.
Because that is a leased position?
Yeah,
Correct.
we pay their salary, they pay us back. That's just an expense, that net zero expense for us. But it does make live here. Exists almost primarily as a contract vehicle for the HUD payments from Grand County and the grant, and we want to give all of it to the Regional Housing Authority once it's set up to take it.
Our goal was to get that done this year, but it'll be a next year thing. It's sorry, I stood up because I gotta. Do anything, how are you?
Thank you.
Anything else on the housing authority?
No.
There's none.
That gets us through.
So any wrap up on these three presentations?
But that's the end of it from my side, if we have anything else.
So I suggest, no, I would like to take chance to talk, answer your questions about human services,
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
and then we can talk about this survey that went out to y'all.
Yeah, let's talk about human services, because I had that question, I think, for reminding me, and then we'll do a little break. Come back.
Do we have a handout for human services or no?
He just has questions.
Rachel had mentioned that there
Yes.
are going to be changes in the human services budget.
Yes.
That we'll see. At our next work session or in the final proposed budget.
It'll be a part of the final proposed budget. Tracy and I went over fund balance, and went over expenses. The first big item that came up in the working session with you all around human services was the way in which we're assigning administrative charges. The administrative charges, we've agreed, is far more transparent to add a second layer of transparency, whereas the money comes in as a revenue and it goes out as an expense. And we do that within every other fund. I don't know why it was set up like this in this one, but I'm applying it now, so we're far more transparent on what the administrative fund is doing and how much goes out. We also validated the numbers again, which are grants versus expense. There were expense numbers that were higher than the grant number within our 2025 ending balance. So that revises our total ending balance, which is far different than had been received before and seen in front of me. And I just want to make sure that I highlight that with you all to show that our ending fund balance, much like with ambulance, looks very different. And this one is around 279,000, not 957. What happened was a compounding of the end of year 26, end of year 25, and then estimates on 26. So we come out with a $280,000 fund balance as compared to 957,000, huge difference. And that is in line with how we should be managing the fund. We'll continue to narrow in on that 279. Tracy and I are talking, we think it might be around, because this fund human services receives a portion of property tax. And it may be fund balance related to property tax that's not been spent completely down in the past, as opposed to grant funds, which is really where they narrow in their spending every year around the amount they receive from the state. So we'll continue to hone in on that this next 2026 year.
I don't see the human services.
I'm looking at it on the proposed 2026 budget that was delivered a while back.
Okay.
So, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and the team feels much more comfortable with what's in there, and the reality of this session is that you're in the part of it, the iterations that really you wouldn't see previously. Now you're seeing how the iterations work between the team, the finance team, and the county manager's office when we get to a final budget. So you're having access to a lot more of that inner conversation, which is great because you get to see where we don't know in finance or in the county manager's office how much operationally goes into packing these budgets, and the teams really get that opportunity to do it.
This one, you've heard me say this before, probably. With all of the different ways that the state funds human services activity, this is the hardest portion of our budget to understand. It's historically for me at least, so. Thank you. I don't have anything else. Anything else on human services?
Okay, let's do a quick break and then we'll jump into talking about the results of our homework. Let's see. It is 11:54 on my clock. Do we start back up at noon?
So funny, here's this one.
That I can obey, you know,
Was it?
so it's still full sensations.
And that's.
All right.
Oh, yeah. Fabulous. Sorry, Candy.
A lot of lighting on this.
Oh, sorry.
What's that?
Today.
Lunch today?
Yeah,
it's
Oh, God. Thank you. Started. We are back. Thank you for indulging the break.
Someone's got a live mic.
And we've got live mic and. Well, more than one. Why it sound like.
Something got turned on.
This one's the only one that should be on. Who has one on?
If you're in the room, if you have a Zoom video open, we can open your Zoom meeting and make sure it's muted.
Is it yours?
I'm not, I don't know.
Well, that one should be.
That's the mic to that. Nothing else.
Not me. It's like, I'm out, dude. I'll get the place.
No one? All right, I'm gonna mute everyone, I'm sure. Hello? Okay. We picked up stuff?
Are we sure there's
Yeah.
still audio on the?
Looks like it. Hello? No, yeah, we're still working.
Okay. Okay. All right, you can show up on New Year's Eve if you're running in my room, just so them and see. We are, so now, rather than try to, I'm just gonna ask you, Colton, to summarize
Yes.
what we were up to last week, trying to figure out how to rank these priorities and where we're going from there.
Okay, so attached in the packet is the blank version of this calculator. It was sent to each one of the commissioners. There's there's really 6 scores that you could have given. The primary ones to pay attention to are 1 through 4. So what was in here was the ability to remove projects out of the capital budget that were in the proposed budget. There was also an ability to fund something at 50%, so it can be reassessed halfway through the year. To fund it entirely, which is 1, so the lower the score, the better, the higher priority. 3, to fund it to no funding in 26 unless new revenue can be found. 4 is no funding in 26, period. And NA is that it was already in the proposed budget, so the only thing to do there was to take it out if you didn't want it. So I sent all of these to the commissioners. We got 3 different scores. They've been averaged into column G here, which we'll go through. The proposed deficit to start this was almost 2 million. And this delta here is either an adding or subtracting of that deficit, depending on what was taken. And this 1.786 million is the average deficit from all 3. So you guys did confer on a very similar range of deficits between The lowest was 1.6, the highest was 1.89, 1.6 something. And so basically, because we did a nominally data-driven solution this year, the nice thing is. The nice thing is that the data kind of tranches itself, right? So really, instead of, what I'm trying to avoid is talking about each proposal individually, talking about tranches. So everything that was given a 1, so built in here is a calculator. Basically, the ceiling is, you needed to get 1.4 or less as the average score to get funded in the first tranche. So if you see here, we have a lot of 1s here, right? A lot of things that were completely agreed to were either ongoing debt. So lease payments, like the debt, like the health clinic. Some very steady state operations. A few positions universally got a 1. The facilities tech, the long range planner, and the fire mitigation. PCSU extension person. As well as moving the HR specialist back to 40. Those were the FTEs that universally got a 1. Some adjustments to building operations and dues. The other things that you're seeing here getting 1s are negatives, which means they were universally taken out of the budget. And the reason this is there was a proposal in the calculator that would allow us to hold on non-contractual, so non-leased capital payments and use the revenue from a building sale to pay for those. So those were removed. That's why in here they're negatives, right? Because they were in the original proposed budget. So that was universally taken. The only capital that is not a debt payment, that is not a negative number in here, is the transit vehicle, the bus, because we don't want to lose the grant. The other FTE things here are the commission did agree to take the 5% salary reduction off the budget, not people's paychecks, to be clear. This is basically to normalize the turnover rate at the beginning. Was also to fund FPPA through halfway through the year, because unlikely we will be paying it.
Until the happy.
Yeah, so not funded for the full year because we won't be paying it until at least June. So anyway, we'll get to this in a second. The next tranches is 1.3s, which you can basically do the math and realize that's 2 1s and a 2. Then 1.6, which is either 1 3 and 2 1s or 2 2 1, right? And then it kind of jumps to 2.3 from there. So on the summary slide here, I have basically a matrix of the score ceiling. So if you fund all the 1s, you run a deficit of 2 million. If you fund all the 1.4s and below, you actually have a smaller deficit because it includes freezing the deputy county manager position. Okay. And then if you do 1.7 and down, which is the next tranche, it is 2.1 million. If you do 2.5 and down, it is 2.2 million. If it's 3 and down, it is less than 3, which means at least one person put a 2 in there. It's 2.4 million. So what I'm recommending, just based on looking at the data and nothing else, is that we split it into 2 tranches. One is this 1.4, which gives us the smallest general fund deficit. That is all these positions and reductions, right? Here in the first tranche. So pull the capital out, fund Thor, fund the health clinic, fix some revisions to some transfers, do the HR specialist, the facilities tech 1, the long range planner, the CXU extension, the patrol vehicle leases, the bus operating increases for the treasurer's office, FPPA, bring the.
What is number 31, line 31, turnover?
That is taking 5% off all the general fund salaries to pay, to have
Child.
turnover pay for it,
Okay.
right? So we're basically budgeting this year, assuming we're gonna turn over. So what that means operationally is two things. It doesn't cut anybody's pay. But basically says we know we're gonna see turnover. It might not be in your division, but it's gonna be somewhere in the general fund. So if you go over on your salary line, that is not that division's fault. It just means they didn't turn over because someone else is gonna go under, right? So it's pooled risk on the salary line. Bringing the executive assistant, paralegal up to 40. Adding some money back into the animal shelter for their operations. And bringing the shelter assistant, paying for the benefits to move 2 part-time people into 1 full-time person. For the shelter. The second tranche. Which is basically 1.7. And below. Is stuff we will reassess. Halfway through the year, that's the C-chat vehicle. That position you heard about from Brenda today. The GIS increases and operating increases in facilities. Computer leasing, step and grade for the sheriff. Code enforcement officer, software and hardware at the end of its life, and the sergeants and investigations. So basically, this is gonna give you an out the gate rush. We're gonna see how we're doing in June with revenue and have a conversation about those narrower topics.
So the goal is to fund, the June proposal with, sale of capital assets?
No, that's a
Oh.
separate issue. This is stuff that we will come back and talk about again in June and see if we've got the budget to pay for it. And how revenue is doing. If revenue is overperforming, it's an easier conversation. If revenue is underperforming, then we have a harder conversation in general.
So then is the capital. The capital components of this plan that have been pulled out, they're on their own timeline and that timeline.
They're on their own timeline, they're dependent on building. Yeah,
So not 6 months, it could be 3 months, it could be 9 months when we start to sell buildings.
yeah.
We'll start to prioritize capital.
Yes, and we will come back. So the proposal I have is that CIP. That CIP fund, which we haven't really used very well, the sale of that building. Minus whatever expenses we need to do to actually sell the building in case of the annex, which is move people into the courthouse. Goes into that fund, we have a number in there, say it's $800,000, we come back to the board and we say, we wanna do this for $800,000 and we want it to follow a 10-year CIP plan that. Rachel's been working on and everyone's been working on, so I think that's the most elegant way to do it, because essentially we are offloading capital to pay for capital. With one-time money is paying for one-time expenses. I'm hesitant to conflate those two narratives. When we have a really clean line right now, which is that we are looking to offload capital right now. And that will help us catch up on some capital stuff all at once, which then will help us with the operating decision. There.
Your colleagues, on that point. Sense to me that we would ask at the 6 month check-in, that we include, you know. What do we think is likely with the buildings? Are there any capital needs that really are urgent that we can't? How do you feel about that? We don't have to make a definitive decision right now, but I just wanna give you a sense of where my head is at.
Question on, building sales, we've been talking about this all year. When are we gonna put them on the market?
As soon as we fix the basement. Because right now, human services and the resource center,
Right.
and we can't do anything with the basement until. You can't do anything with the annex move until the basement is done.
Okay,
Cause we can't really sell the building with people in it.
okay,
And we have decisions to make, I think, as to how. Which of the options for. How that is being and work.
Yeah, and we're accelerating that timeline.
and we need to make that decision before we start putting walls up down there.
I think that would be ideal, but. A lot of the proposals that we're seeing, the cost could be fairly marginal in the basement area, and then more of the cost might be in different parts of the building. But yes, ideally, you would have a consensus before we're doing the final renovations on the basement. But the remediation needs to get done either way, so that's what's. Is that right, man? Yep.
Like I have several takes on this outcome that I wanted to talk to you about adjusting. Things that had occurred to me that I wanted to dig into, but I don't need to start. Maybe before we get to reactions, let's make sure we're wrapped up on questions. We understand what happened here.
Do you kind of understand how these got collated? See the tranching lines in blue? This is the first tranche. Where you universally were at 20 of them or
In agreement?
in agreement.
Wow,
Right.
great team.
Four of them, there was 1, 2. So 1, 1, 2. This was either 1, 3 and 2 1s or 2, 2, 1. And then after that, you're really seeing them kind of accelerate away from where they're at. Oh, I see, so they got maybe this. Oh, shoot, sorry. The second tranche includes anything under 3. Not 2.5, yeah.
I am going to start with the small stuff first. I see here the code enforcement officer is in
Tranche 2.
tranche 2. I wanted to ask what we think about, what staff thinks about as an alternative to creating an FTE. Restoring the FTE that exists to 40 hours.
That would make up a little bit of the difference that we have, that code enforcement gap, obviously we have an unlimited amount of code enforcement too, so it's really up to you how much code enforcement you want to have. That's making a dent, it's not really addressing our needs.
It occurred to me that we could just ask for the budget to restore that, like, across other budget proposals, we've seen restore positions before we've seen creating FTEs. And it just occurred to me while I was going through this that we could restore that position, we could do it now.
That makes sense. I thought that was important, given all of our constituents' concerns. But that would be a good compromise.
Is it okay to say, because I think I'm spraying this on you, David? I sent Colton an email about an hour before this, but I didn't include you in it. Does it make sense that we just ask that staff think about that? And we're gonna.
Would your person be okay going to full time?
I'd have to consult with them, haven't spoken to anybody on staff yet about it. We can see what their desires are. It's a 4-10 work day.
Yeah, the concern I would have there only is that we've never done it where there's supervisors to 132. Right? So I think that's why we were leaning towards another 0.8 in this case, was because we were trying to not untangle that knot right now, but we can definitely talk about it.
What do you think?
I think it would still be possible for them to do 40 hours without the supervisor doing 40 hours. We have some staff members that are working on days off without a supervisor available. Really, we're available to them on call when they're working, when we're not working. So that's how we would work with it logistically.
Are you okay with, both of you with kind of letting this question sit and either seeing an answer in the proposed budget or as an option to discuss when it comes back to us?
I think we need to hear from your person. But the original proposal makes sense. I mean, I really wanted to give you another person, but Given how tight everything is. Or,
Colton, you said so that first bracket, you made a mistake, so that goes down to the 3.
I'm sorry, no, when I said tranche 2 was everything under 2, it's actually everything under 3. This tranche right here. This thing to reassess in 26 is everything under 3,
So that's at the 6-month.
yes.
And then if it's above that, like the code enforcement officer, it's profit.
No, the code enforcement officer is right now in that second tranche, because it scored higher than 1.4, but less than 3.
So what would we do with that?
So I think this is actually one where, because we want to come back to you with a final budget, unless y'all feel strongly that you want to talk about that proposal, we're not gonna have a meeting until the final budget is due. Right, so unless you are uncomfortable with me calling y'all individually and getting your feedback, so I can direct Rachel to put it in there or not put it in there. That would be, that's how we handle that, because we don't have another workshop until then. 'Cause we have
Okay,
Thanksgiving,
so David will get back to Colton on the answer.
and then I'll talk to y'all individually.
Okay, alright.
Can I ask a clarifying
Uh-huh.
question? If in fact you give them the additional 0.2, does that then preclude getting another position as was originally requested at the 6 months?
It changes it in my mind. It guarantees some more bandwidth now, and I think it. Frankly, I think like we all know the math, right, it makes it harder to justify the need. In 6 months, in a scenario where we have. I mean, if we have $500,000 more in revenue than we're anticipating within 6 months, which feels unlikely. In that scenario, I think it would be harder to justify adding another position.
Well, just because the need is across the board, the same with the animal shelter, they didn't. It's like, we wanna help, but can't give them everything they need.
So I mean, I lean towards doing a little bit now. Knowing that, but that's like, my take, colleagues, is that if staff thinks about this, talks to the people on the team. Thinks this is a good idea, I'd be happy to just see it in the budget, like, I don't know that we need to. Have a bunch of back and forth between the board, because if staff thinks it's not a good idea for some reason, I also don't know that I need an explanation on that. So.
So you tell Colton what your staff person says and what you think about it. And then he'll let us know, and so then we're kind of back to the first position, whether or not to fund an additional.
So,
Yeah, I think what I would suggest is regardless of that decision, you still talk about it again in June. Right? Yeah, just talk about it again in June, that's kind of a separate, it's the same capacity issue, but it's a separate solution. They add the 0.2 and we still feel like we need to have more. Maybe that's a separate conversation, it just depends.
Yeah.
okay, so I think we're good on that one, other thoughts all about sort of how you might modify this, you want me to keep going from my list? One of the things that I hopped into my head this morning, with apologies to the sheriff's office. We're not including any allocation for patrolling in Georgetown into this budget. I'm sure at the staff level, I mean, but like you all have talked about this and you've got a reason why. But this is an invitation, should we be including projected expenses in next year's budget?
I don't think so, because we haven't gotten, those IGAs have not been signed.
Oh,
We can do that, the way the conversation is going with Georgetown is that it's a largely self-sustaining contract financially. So it can just be supplemented in once it passes. I don't want to have this budget reflect a decision that the town nor the board has agreed to.
Okay.
That's just me.
okay. But you're working on that, Sheriff?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there was a meeting this morning.
Yeah, I think it would just overly complicate the discussion, and I don't want to get in front of those independent conversations.
Just wanted to ask a question, because I think we've all been very clear as a board that we support that situation. Okay, thank you. I want to talk to you both about the deputy county manager, the decision to freeze that position. The way I had responded to this survey, what I thought would be wise would be to budget. I chose number 2, which is to budget 50% of the funding. So that in 6 months, what I would like to see is either the county manager say that they want this position, or that they have an alternative. What I don't think, colleagues, is that not filling that position for a year is sustainable and will result in progress on the goals that matter. And so if we were to move this up for 50% funding in the budget, basically all say, yep, we want number 2, we're gonna put 50, we're gonna only realize 50% of those savings. That means that the county manager has 6 months to say either, I want the deputy county manager position, like I learned that I need it, or I have some kind of an alternative, whether that's, fiscal analyst or, a project manager or whatever that looks like. A lot of different ideas have been thrown around, a lower level position. We've got the space in the budget to say, yes, we need either this or this, but we know we need the capacity. And that's because I really worry, colleagues, that without the ability within 6 months to add to the bandwidth of our like, problem solving team, we're just not gonna make the progress on the goals that we need to see.
Well, let alone burning out our county manager.
Precisely. And part of this is, I thought the conversation on the leadership team was compelling. One of the things I heard from multiple members of the leadership team was that the additional bandwidth in the county manager's office allowed more attention to the problems at the division and elected office level and resulted in more trust. And I don't want to take steps back on that. So I'm curious if you both can live with putting half of the funding for that position in next year's budget, knowing that we'll be hiring something halfway through.
Colton, will we last another 7 months?
Think so. But I guess a lot of that is gonna come down to what these goal conversations in early 26 look like.
I was gonna say, how does that change to, with your other plan of possibly hiring 2 separate pieces to that in the future?
One of them is in here and that's the long-term planner, so that I think that's gonna add a lot of capacity in places that we really need it. Now, I do think there is still more room on the county operations side for capacity, or at least just like redundancy. Right? And if I get hit by a bus,
Or you wanna take
You
a
know,
vacation?
right, or anything, like, we have no backup plan at that point. So that's that, and, if I forget something or can't get to something, stuff's just not moving. Like, I understand that I'm doing what I can not to be that bottleneck for things by relying on the leadership team, but yeah, it's, I haven't had a great sample of what the job is because we've been catching up. And it's been so chaotic, so I'm hesitant to use the last 3 months as a good barometer. What a healthy organization can look like, but it's the position of that position's vacant, it's a lot of money, and we have a lot of needs on this sheet, and so I'm more than happy to discuss it in June.
Well, what about, is it helpful to think about a half FTE for that position? To get your help now?
I don't know who would do that for part-time,
Oh,
that level of work.
okay.
And so functionally, like where we're at with, we say, yeah, we wanna go with what's in the spreadsheet right now. That is, we would have to make an appropriation or find some savings somewhere else to create any position. Either hire into DCM at some point in the year or create a different replacement position, right?
I think-
Make no change.
I think the best way to budget this is actually to not fund any position, any of the yellows right now. And have that conversation about making an additional appropriation in June.
So right now it's blue and it's taking $221,000
Right.
out of it.
So I would add I would just add the full, because once you add it, It might not be to this budget, but it's to next, it's gonna be, the whole load is gonna be on next year's budget. I would recommend having that conversation holistically about the long-term effects on the budget in June about that position.
So I should say.
Outside of trying to save money on the optics right now.
It should say 50% June, not 5%.
Yeah. So we'll talk about, I think these couple of these FTE talks we need to have in June. I would not worry about budgeting them now. I would look at making the appropriation then. Because you're gonna be making the full appropriation at 27. We don't wanna make it easier on ourselves by not looking at the full number.
Mhm.
The full number will be in 27, right? And so. I wouldn't fund anything halfway unless. Until we've made a discrete decision for the long term impacts of that position.
Right.
So we'll bring it back in June. But I would look at our revenues and look at making the appropriation then. Does that work for you, Rachel?
Absolutely. It's on the list, write it down.
Okay, I'm at least happy knowing that it's gonna, that. I don't even see in here a guarantee that we're discussing that as an option.
Yeah, we will.
In tranche
I'll add it in
two.
tranche two.
And so I can live with that.
And then there was another person, instead of adding the county deputy, you may. Look into, it would be two separate, it would, and cost more. But it would be two separate people that would take that position of the deputy, correct?
Yeah, one of them is already in here, so it'd be a question of the second position versus that.
So that would be long-term planning and what?
I haven't decided to.
I just want people to know that it's not like this plan that's not replacing anything, it's going just in a different direction.
It would be potentially shoring up other parts of the organization to give them capacity to then do stuff that that person will be doing.
And like, a flag for me in this conversation is I heard Colton say. It depends on your conversation about your goals next year. And like, I'm probably not the only person on this board. That's gonna wanna see us make significant project on some of the important issues, right? Like, I would rather us have the capacity to have a big goals list and get it done than not. So that's where this is coming
But
from.
one of our big goals is getting a handle on the budget and then overextending ourselves too.
And I believe that we do that by giving ourselves the capacity to solve problems. Or giving our team, right? So, okay, so then I'm satisfied with where that's at, it's in tranche two. It's got the full number, not the half number, I can live with that. What else? I wanna talk about, like, we talked already about the chief deputy clerk and recorder position. I had that one as don't fund. I understand a little bit now the need more. This is related to succession planning. I don't think there's a scenario where I support creating a permanent FTE to fulfill a 6-month succession plan. I don't know how you get that back once you fund it. There's one way, right, which is that the person that takes that job gets elected, that job becomes vacant, cut it out of the budget in 6 years, and I think the way that we would operationalize that would be to say, we are only willing to consider a temporary position.
Well, and are we gonna do that every 4 years or every 8 years that this position comes up?
I,
And if that's the case, you could say that for all the. That's it.
it makes sense to think about it as a succession plan and spend a little bit of extra money to fund the succession plan when you've got one in place. I think right now we're kind of dealing in hypotheticals. And so I think I think my ask to like put all of this into like how I think this proposal should change is that I think that tranche 2 mid-year review, which should, if it's actually in there, should only include funding for half the year. Because the only commitment that I can see myself making is for a temporary hire. I can see a scenario in 6 months where
I would
we
think,
know who's running, there's only one person, we want that person to be able to get in and get training, learn about the elections.
and then somebody runs, gets that person and they lose.
Which is why I would make it a temporary position. And I know I'm making Peter uncomfortable. By June, we will know whether we have a competitive election or a person who is obviously. Like we may only have one person running, right? And in that case, like at that point, there's a solid argument for let this person experience an election. Right? If we're in a competitive election, are we gonna like pick one of those people and hire them or not? Like I just, that scenario doesn't make sense to me. So there's only one scenario that I would even be comfortable with, which is to fund that position for 6 months and then eliminate it at the end of the year. And so if that's how you feel as well, right now, we could just cut that tranche 2 number in half now.
It feels better to me.
It sounds like Brenda, I mean, Brenda is so experienced, knows what to do. We're going to lose her. It's gonna take the new person a while to get up to speed. And elections are so important that I think she made a good argument for getting a deputy, whether or not that person runs for the office.
So the history of this position, I don't think justifies a long-term need for that position. And I don't know that the clerk really made that argument. She did say that this is a position that's more than 40 hours a week, that's very demanding. I can definitely understand that, it's an elected position, it's just like ours, right? And I think that's kind of what you sign up for when you run for an elected position. So there was a chief deputy clerk until January 31st of 2020. And then that position was vacant for a while. And then there was a chief deputy clerk that left in June of 2023. So we have gone through elections without this position. In 2020, brand new clerk and recorder, Brenda Corbett, who had experience as the prior deputy, the chief deputy, I'll grant that. In 2022, it looks like that election was conducted successfully without this position. Same thing in 2024. And so I just don't think there's a long range need for it. And I think once we create the position and hire it, like you're talking about a layoff to right size it down. Right? So.
I'm very concerned about the integrity of our elections. And if we get somebody brand new, I guess Brenda will be here through the election. And then that person will have a year to get up to speed on things before the next election. But I would be more comfortable, not completely taking it out of the budget, but having the ability to get extra help if needed. Not quite sure how to do that. If Brenda said she didn't think anybody would do it part-time. But I'd be more comfortable revisiting it. 6 months, if we have any money. See how Brenda feels at that point, see who's stepping up to the plate. As opposed to completely taking down the budget.
Anything else you want?
No, I think it feels weird to hire somebody. To set them up to run for election. I think it's just like messing with politics and it just feels. I mean, if you're gonna hire somebody to be in that position to train people, then that's an FTE that. Right now we can't afford hiring somebody for 6 months to just get to know that job. I just. If you have somebody in mind, say you don't like that is gonna run, are you gonna hire that person to fill, or is it just gonna become political?
Hmm.
It's just so weird for me to. You know, we have many departments that are elected.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, and that, and you make a very good point. I'm just concerned that if we have a complete newbie, that we might need a deputy position, and I'm not saying just hire them for 6 months, I'm saying hire a deputy position to support the brand new clerk, just to protect the integrity of our elections.
It might be helpful to make sure we're on the same page about what information we'll have and when, right? In June, we will know who's on the ballot. That could be one person, that could be two people, that could be 10 people.
Mhm.
By December, by the time we're passing our next budget, a year from now, we will know who's been elected.
Mhm.
And so some of the answers to the anxiety that you're expressing that I share, and like if we get someone who has never done this before, do we need to?
Oh, I see what
have
you're
that
saying,
position
that next year. We could revisit this to see how the clerk's office is doing and.
We can make that decision then, right? If we hire somebody who's, clearly not, if someone is elected who's clearly not qualified, maybe we do just need to create that position. Right, but we can make that decision in December.
Alright.
The only decision that I think I could see myself making in June is like, okay, there's clearly one candidate on the ballot. They clearly could benefit from going through an election cycle
Mm.
while they're not having sole responsibility, and I could see myself saying that makes sense. I could also see myself saying, actually, there's 3 different candidates and I don't wanna, we're not gonna create an opportunity for anybody that, hey, maybe come with this.
That makes sense.
Right, so that's why my proposal is that what we do right now is we turn tranche 2 into the thing that we would consider as a 6-month position.
And that's not set in stone, that's just. Something to consider in June, I'm okay with that.
And then in December, like, depending on how things work out, we can say, actually, we're gonna make this position permanent. Or no, we're not, like,
Alright,
so, does that,
Jody, you okay with that?
I just think the whole thing seems weird.
what would you like to do with it?
I think we should just run it like every other election. You know, like we're new, we went to training, we don't learn stuff and.
Yeah, but our job, we have, there's only 3 of us.
But it's not like somebody's gonna run for clerk and recorder that's not interested in the job.
No,
So I
but we
think
could have. A real extreme person, I mean, I.
There's always a lot of what if.
In that scenario, there's no fixing it, and there's no amount of money it would cause a teenager's version of a clerk and recorder to have impacts on what's happening with elections and Cleveland County. But all of that said, I'm curious, like, are you saying that you don't even wanna see the position too? Are you saying you wanna see half of it? Are you saying like,
I don't think it's necessary, but maybe I'm missing something.
Well, from my perspective, what is missing is we have a very experienced clerk and recorder who says. You know, she's working well over 40 hours a week. It's very complicated. And there's no one trained to do it currently in the office. And she came into the position having formerly had experience as a clerk in the clerk and recorder's office. And I'm just concerned that if we have somebody with no experience and no deputy, that it could be a difficult election in 2027 or whatever's coming up.
This 6-month job though is. I don't know when this person starts. June, Brenda's gonna be there till. January or December, whenever they end, and the new person comes in January. So that's the person that's gonna be there for 6 months. When does that person start? When does that person end? Cause they're not, right now, if we fund it in 2026 for 6 months, they're not gonna be there in January of 2027.
unless the person that gets hired into that position gets
Is
elected?
is the sole person.
That's what you're counting on, is we're hiring somebody to run for office.
No, I'm not saying we're hiring someone to run for office. I'm saying, once we know in June, because they have to.
So
What is
it's-
it, like March? They have to.
It's-
By then we would know who's.
If somebody does by petition, it's July 9th. Just to let you know.
No.
Unaffiliated.
So why don't we just bring back the whole item in June?
Okay,
And talk
all right.
about that.
I'm good with that.
Because there's a lot of variables, we'll know what ifs we're talking about right now,
Yes.
we don't know, and we might know by then.
Sure.
And could form.
And I mean, we have like all these directors here that need money and we're putting money into a what if and.
And, well, what we're doing is we're citing a number to bring back, we're not actually putting any money in the budget. And so like, I can live with leaving it in there, I just wanna be very clear, and I don't think I'm the only one on this board. That I'm not interested in almost any circumstance and creating this position on a permanent basis. So we can leave it there, and we can talk about it again, I don't think my opinion is gonna change.
So if we don't have it in at all, we have no option in June.
No, we can bring back anything you want, Jim, because we're gonna reappropriate them. Anything that's on this list is not gonna be in the budget. So you'll give us the authority to appropriate additionally. Any one of these, so. And any component or fraction thereof, right? It'll basically be a tiny little budget process all over again, because we wanna relook at. Revenue and expenses at that point, right? We might have room in the existing budget, but then we need to talk about how that impacts 27. We might need to appropriate more funds because revenue is doing better than we thought. We might need to cut. In June. So like. Everything's on the table, so I don't wanna over prescribe what that needs to look like today, because half the reason that we're doing it is seeing how what's gonna happen. There's just as much chance, if not more chance, that we're looking at potentially reducing expenses in June and not adding anything. Right, so let's just bring it back as the whole ask, and then if you guys wanna look at a term, or maybe things change, or whatever, you know, I think it matters a lot, honestly, on how much money is available. Realistically.
Which we don't know.
Which we don't know.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with leaving it in tranche two as it is, all of this conversation considered. We will know by July whether any, or by June, whether any petitions have been pulled for someone to petition onto the ballot.
Right.
And they will have had to announce by then, by the time you start seeking signatures, you have to announce and more now, so like, we will know. Who's trying to get on the ballot. Okay, other thoughts, other things that we would like to adjust on this?
Okay, remind me if somebody, if one has a 16666, what's its status?
Right now, it's in the second tranche. It's to relook at.
So everything that's yellow, we're basically sending a signal that if we'll fund this, we can. It's fun.
Okay,
I've got too many things open, I've gotta get back to, here we go. Any comments from, I mean, we've been sitting here discussing this, any comments from any of the offices or division directors, or anything on what's here, what's not in here?
I had a couple of the ownership, just let some speak on it that I'm here. Just on, I can't really see it very well, but our only concern I had with the wait until 6 months, I think on our step increase is on there. There's several staff members that are due for their step increase starting in January. I think the position for the investigative sergeant, all that makes sense. That's the only one I have concerns for, because we'll have several staff members between January and June that aren't getting their step increase on their annual date. So that'd be my concern with that. Wishing it to.
Okay, thank you.
is everybody else budgeted for step increases?
They only exist in the sheriff's office.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Let you answer questions on here.
I think Rachel let it on.
If, if they were able to reduce their expenses elsewhere to cover those 6 months to a year. And we asked the sheriff's office to go back and find $90,000 in their operating budget and cover it. Would that be something you want to hear again? Or so I'm bringing this up because this could very well happen, something similar to what we had happen in the beginning of the year where we had a need, the sheriff's office had a need, they found a way to save money, increase revenue, whatever. Is this something that you're open to them coming back to you for money, or if they have it and they just do it in line with the compensation plan, knowing that they have savings somewhere else?
This is an important nuance, right? Because functionally, not putting the funding in the budget doesn't mean they can't do it. They can figure out how else to do it. The reason that I'll just give the reason I said, let's look at this in 6 months in my response to the survey was because of the downside risk in the budget. I really want us to be in a position in 6 months where sales tax revenues look good, we're not anticipating something happening in the real estate market, et cetera, but that was me hedging against that risk when I said, let's look at it in 6 months.
Right, and then we also have the FPPA expenses coming up too.
That's also a mid-year
That,
adjustment also.
that's a mid-year and that one is being funded. And so I definitely, I kind of looked at you and I asked if anybody had any comments, because I knew it was gonna come up, right, because it matters, I think that. And I don't, any other comments from anybody else? Can you live with that?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for representing the sheriff's office here. Other comments? How would directors, I'll ask the question I've been asking the board or elected offices. How would you change this? What did we get wrong? Right, transparency is also you being invited to challenge us in public.
I'll just say I can't really see the entire list, and this is the first time I've kind of seen the results of what you guys have put in there, so. I'm not really able to answer your question, because I don't quite know what's in tranche one or not in any of them.
And can you?
Yeah,
open that up?
I'll send this out. I mean, this is well, so you're looking at what wasn't included at all, is what you're asking, Matt?
Sure. Yeah,
So that's this list here.
Okay.
So I'll read them off if you can't read them. Animal shelter, washer and dryer, again, it's gonna be reassessed. A lot of this is CIP. Right, that can be reassessed once we sell the building.
Yep.
All staff received 6.25 retirement and match with FPPA. Courthouse, ADA, the shooting park, sequel. Through the mass storage replacement corner, video surveillance, the human resources and finance enterprise system. The Dumont facility improvements, the sheriff's office equipment, the detention improvements. The generator and surveillance system at the transfer station. The adjustments to the corners, the adjustments to the corner twos and the morgue. So those were all that aren't in there.
The capital items
It's mostly capital.
are.
They'll be reassessed again when this
When we sell stuff.
building is sold.
The sequel system is something that sounded like it was in tandem with a statewide initiative, is that right? With the Air Quality Council grant? I feel like
No.
it's a-
No, that's our GIS SQL database. It's a 2016 version, and basically we've reached as a result, we've reached the limit to the software, our GIS software updates that we can apply, and our database updates that we can apply. Because our vendor is no longer supporting anything beyond on that particular version. So we're able to continue to function. But any new security enhancements or software updates they release just won't be applied to our information or products.
And we're on that with a lot of IT stuff, so we're hoping that we can sell the building at soon.
I guess maybe what you were thinking of was, we have 3 other SQL servers, I think they're all the same version. One for the clerk and recorders data, one for the treasurer's data, one for the assessor's data. And so eventually it would make sense to upgrade all of those servers and instances. As you can see, it's an expensive product.
And are we budgeting for that at all, or these are just?
Still in the CIP list, but again, it's. Again, all of this, right, and I just wanna reiterate, like, all of this pain, all of this disappointment, we are still running a $1.9 million general fund deficit. Right? Like, this feels like a lot of taking away, but. We're still not paying for our costs now, right? So it's always helpful to remind them of that. We are still eating into our savings account to just function. So we should be. We should be agonizing about any growth, if anything, right? Just because. We're still not even caught up to neutral, so.
So how are we doing versus like 2 years ago? How much were they? How much was eating into?
We have been consistently running the same, around the same range of deficits. The issue is where the priorities are in the county ship, right? Savings have been found in other places to bring services to different places, right? Like, you know, I'm $500,000 of this is the health clinic that didn't exist 5 years ago, right? So it just depends, right? Like, it's been shifting, the prioritizations have been shifting, and in real terms, it's less. Because $2 million now is way less money than $2 million 5 years ago or 10 years ago, right? So in real terms, we're shrinking. And we're offering some operations that didn't exist before. But we've also lost operations that did exist, like the weed control team, dispatch was under contract, right? Like, it's complicated. The reality is, though, is that we still have a lot of work to do to catch up. You know, unless we're gonna see like wholesale service line elimination. I think that's where we're at on the expense side.
My own take is that until we have. Revenue solutions, we should be running between $1 and $3 million deficits. We've got $17 million in the reserve to absorb that. That was the plan, it wasn't my plan, it was the plan of people to make sure we had that reserve, so that we have time to run deficits. And figure this out instead of. 4 years ago saying, we're eliminating at 60 IDs.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I just wanna add one more little nuance, which is that 2 years ago, the revenue projections were wrong. So it felt as though we weren't having this kind of pain happen to us until further out, and that isn't the case. We're having conversations that were probably anticipated further out. Now, whether or not they were wrong because of the economic conditions of today, or in a method that was completely different, that's just the reality of what was different 2 years ago.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point. We are having this conversation in an incredibly difficult economic situation right now. If we were having this conversation in 2022, when things were going crazy with sales tax, that would be a lot different than now. The fact is, we're maintaining operations. We are giving everyone their full COLA, which I can tell you our neighboring counties are not gonna be able to do, right? So like, we're doing okay considering the economic the headwinds we are facing right now.
We were, just for the record, and Sheriff's Office, you all can back me up on this, I remember some really hard conversations about our budget in 2022.
Yeah.
There's not been a budget year that, since 2016, where we've been not emphasizing where can we find savings and working really, really hard at that.
And I'm sorry if it came out from, I meant to give a credit to the previous work that's been done. Because those hard conversations were had in times that were a little bit more optimistic. When we're getting pessimistic, these are hard, but they're not as painful as they're gonna be for some of you.
What happened was we had about a 6 month
Yeah.
period where we thought we were pretty close. Right? In 2024. Anything else? Any other changes anybody else wants to make to this proposal? I have. Should I pause for a while?
I'm good.
I could get, I just have one other thing that I think we still need to follow up on, which is, in our conversation with the coroner. We were looking at, I'd asked the coroner his thoughts on the staffing analysis and. Just trying to make sure that the coroner's office is in line with expenditures with the other counties. And I haven't seen anything come back. So my default position, looking at this staffing analysis, is that the coroner may not need the funding that is sitting in the proposed budget right now.
And that's based on comparable, that's based on coroner's budgets from other counties that are comparable to our county.
Right.
They are not comparable to our county, those other budgets that were submitted to me.
How so?
They're all different class counties. So I don't see where the comps are. URA is completely different. Route County didn't get back to me, is why I don't have information for you. URA County is all volunteers. He is the emergency management director. So he's a part-time coroner. Because he has 2 county jobs. We went into Route County's budget. They have 7 people. Chief deputy is working like 1,000 hours a year. The other deputies are working 500 hours a year. So those were all part-time positions, and as has been mentioned, nobody is gonna do a part-time. Unless we have a retired person up here who wants to work 500 hours a year in the coroner's office. I don't know, I don't have the talent to pull from to have volunteers and.
Just to be clear, though,
part-time.
it is the same category county. You said,
Right?
yes, you're a category 3A county. As are we.
And the Route County is also?
Route, I can check, but I'm just letting you know your A is a 3A. I don't know, I can't speak to route, I'm sorry.
Colburn.
Yeah, he mentioned it. I mean, they do have more people, but they are budgeted as low as 42 hours a year, right? So when you're looking at FTE counts, that's normalized to how many hours they are budgeted to work, not the number of people who work there,
Yeah.
right? And so there could be. They just have a bigger volunteer pool, and that's the reasonable explanation, but that's why Routes has 7 people, but they only have 1.6 FTEs.
But route is also a 1A, so it is a different category.
And neither of them are anywhere near Denver and competing with the pay scale in Denver. Or have 70 running through the middle of the county.
One of the things that I've learned in comparing to rural resort counties, and this is in our conversations about the DA's budget, is that you may not be competing with metro area waves, so like employer competition, but you sure are competing with a cost of living situation that is way different. We're in a judicial district that has really high salaries, and it's so that the people in Eagle County can afford to live there, and I think Route County is very similar to that. So I mean, there's a lot in a comparison.
None of them were perfect comparisons in the staffing analysis, they're just benchmarks, because we don't have anyone who's like us, not exactly.
So I'm not asking the board to issue any direction. I just wanted the board to know and everybody to know that I continue to have questions about what's proposed for the coroner's office. And I want us to try to find a way to solve that. We asked for the staffing analysis, and it's very clear, right? We've got more FTEs than any of the other counties.
And we also, how many, I think you told me this number before, the number of calls they have to go on versus the other counties?
That true market number accounts for not just our population, but our visiting population.
Right.
That was in the staffing analysis, and
Right,
so,
but the bottom line for the coroner is how many calls they're called out on, not how many people drive to the county.
We have to be prepared for a bus crash. We. I don't know how better to explain to you than we already have, honestly. And it takes a long time to train people.
so any other, like, this is me really trying to give you runway to help me understand what's here, and I don't intend it as a surprise, so, and colleagues to you, it's just a heads up that I'm continuing to ask questions and think about other proposals that can be developed. Anything else? I actually am at the bottom of my list now. Oh, I'm sorry, I looked at Carl and I had one other thing, this is not, this didn't make it to my list of notes here, it was on. We're talking about,
We have already listed.
on the capital list, we're talking about Public Works Dumont facility improvements. Can the Road and Bridge Fund pay for some of those, or are we already showing that split?
I think that'll get fleshed out once we know the exact scope, but we do have general fund operations in that building too, so we're trying to be fair to both funds.
Right,
It would just depend on what's being touched, right? So, the road and bridge maintenance crews fix cop cars or our sheriff's office vehicles, right? The buses are in there, they're completely general fund. The site developments in there, they're general fund, right? It's a complicated. Brookvale, the one over on the east side of the county, is only road and bridge. That's cut and dry. Only road and bridges in there. The Dumont facility, because it's also storing police cars, evidence vehicles, we need to figure out based on the scope of whatever would be done, where the split is appropriate, just to be fair to both ones.
Yes.
So that's just I think that's just a ballpark number for now. Rachel, did you have a different?
We built it mostly burdened onto the general fund because the activities were with, like the fuel, Hunting Island. Which is, the majority is after hours working, right, so, and lighting, exterior lighting. But we did have a small share when we built the original budget that went to road and bridge, but it was marginal in comparison, so that's why the greatest amount of it is in the general fund.
so there's already some split there.
Uh-huh.
Good enough.
Yes. We appreciated that thought process.
Yeah, because it really is, and we want to make sure that those voter approved funds are being used appropriately.
And things do come up, and we just spent $18,000 to repair the gate.
Oh.
That was on the list a year and a half out. But it failed, so. We do have room to make up some of that, but we definitely appreciate the thought process on the share as well.
I promise, I've actually has everything from me. So, based on that, can you summarize what we should expect on in our final budget?
So we still have some revisions to do. We're still finding adjustments, but they'll be pretty marginal at this point, so expect a $1.9 million general fund deficit, and then the road and bridge funds and EMS will all be eating into fund balance, but positive everywhere else. The reason that the road and bridge and EMS items did not show up on here is there was no disagreement with anyone, with y'all. So they'll just go in as proposed. We'll, again, the traction for the county needs to be made on revenue, the general fund, or revenues to offset general fund expenses. That's where our pain is right now. As it has been for 10 years. Yeah.
Revenue expense.
And this, I'm hoping the staff analysis will show that we are as lean as we can get without running into real capacity problems. But there's always room to find expense savings too. They just won't be enough to close this on their own.
So just to make sure that I'm understanding and that it's explicit to the public, and everybody in the room. In the EMS fund, that's funding the cardiac monitors and the window tint
And the 3 FTs.
and the 3 FTs that were in the original budget. Probably.
Yep.
Um,
And then,
in road and bridge, that means equipment outfitting. And vehicles and equipment related to constructions,
yep, and some road projects.
all those are projects that were already in, yes, that's funded. Soda Creek, Ponderosa, Woodard Gulch, Golden Willow, Vanilla Pass.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So you, just. My application, the, compared to comparable counties, you were saying we're doing better.
More specifically, so on the staffing analysis side, I'm confident that we are correctly staffed for the services that we provide. Right now, whether or not we need to provide certain services, I think is a separate question, right?
No, that's in the weeds more, I'm thinking big picture.
Big picture, because we have not been in lead grow 20% a year. Like some of our other resort counties have, because of their revenue has just been going through the roof for 20 years. We are on the footing to handle this kind of crisis better, I think. Because we're more experienced with it, we've gone through it. We've been positioning ourselves in a downturn for a while. Where I think because of those hard conversations that have been had early and the dedication to making sure that general fund draw on the fund balance was as small as possible, we have cushion, right? And we were already lean.
Well, you were also saying earlier in the year, and I hope this continues, that, visitors from Denver, are still coming to Clear Creek, whereas they might not be going to Summit County.
We have not seen the revenue fall off that other people have. Especially on sales tax. Our sales tax has been much more resilient, but we have seen that behavior exhibited the last time there was a big recession too. 08 and 09, the exact same thing happened. Was that we either didn't move, our revenue kind of just stayed flat, or other people saw much bigger drops. And so far, we will get pretty close to our forecasted number for 25.
Okay.
Which is good, which a lot of other counties can't say.
Thank
you. Yeah. For subsidized.
Right.
Gordon?
I'd like to clarify, just got a text, Route is a 2A county, Uray is a 4A county, Lake is a 4B county, Gilpin is 3B, and we are 3A. For comparisons.
And what, I'm sorry, what does that mean?
When we're comparing counties, we're 3A
But how's that defined?
by population,
Okay,
not counting anything other, it's just the population of the counties, is how they're ranked. So we are not the same as any of the other 4 counties that we're being compared to as far as population wise. So I understand we're doing recreational counties or something. So again, it's apples and oranges.
It's always gonna be some level of apples and oranges. We pick the best 4 because population is also not a true gauge of burden. Right.
Those categorizations, as I understand them, they're set by the legislature and they're largely the result of what the county wants to see its elected officials out of. And so every couple of years, the legislature runs another bill updating those categories. Different counties say, I think I want to move up or I think I want to move down, and then the salaries of the elected officials are adjusted based on that. And so that's what, I mean, the legislature, of course, considers factors like population. But it's a pretty arbitrary. the thing I would point out to you is we are talking about population, right? Routt County has a population of 30 or 40,000. And they're doing it on 1.5 FTEs in their coroner's office, and we're doing it on 2.2.
I would suggest pulling up their budget, and seeing how they have their FTEs, because I don't understand how we have 4 people and they have 7 and they have a lower FTE count.
So I just, I just wanna add, Chris is not incorrect. What's in their budget book may not necessarily accurately reflect the employees. I had the same issue with the county attorney's office reference. It listed on ours, it listed Routt as having something like 2.5. They have 6.5 people working there, and I confirmed that with the county attorney. The issue is how they budgeted. So some of those are the human services attorneys, so they're getting paid out of the human services budget. So it doesn't reflect as a county attorney, even though they are, and if you go to the county attorney webpage, you'll see it. I'm just letting you know that and Colton and I talked about this, I'm not saying anything out of order, that sometimes the budget books don't accurately represent the real vibes necessarily, but we have to go off something.
And this is where I think we need to understand, because Routt lists a lot of people. And doesn't appear to pay them in the same way that we pay the smaller number of
Yes.
actual people we have, right? So we have fewer people on our list that are earning more per year than what's happening around County. Right, and so, like, the concept of an FTE, and now I'm probably condescending, is not how many bodies. It's how many 40-hour work weeks are you paying?
Right, FTE.
We are paying for more work than Routt County.
Right, so to be more specific, not to pick on Routt here. But their coroner is full-time. 3 of the people on their list are budgeted at 42 hours a year. The chief deputy coroner is 562 hours a year. And the office assistant is 270 hours a year. All of those people aren't even half an FTE. They work 957 hours a year total.
How many work hours are there in a year?
2,080. That's why their FTE now is low. Now, they might have access to more volunteers or more people that are willing to work on call basis or whatever, but that's just the reality. And that's why FTE is just a normalizing factor that's used, right? So
And that's, I mean,
whether or not that's a realistic solution here is a different story.
that's after an increase in the 2025 budget. Because if you go back to 2022, it was 1.16 FTEs in Routt's budget. So anyway.
And Lake County's hiring another person this year, I think they're full-time FTE, so. It's an interesting comparison, I was a little confused, we tried to figure out. Never seen it done that way before, so I didn't get back to you because it's very difficult to do a comparison to these other counties. There's all different situations. Each county is kind of unique.
There's gotta be a source of truth out there. So, okay, well, thank you. Anything else? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. It's been a really fun budget process. Any final comments about the budget process? You can throw us roses later.
Thank goodness for 1A.
Are we still on the record?
Yes.
So